going. Come on. And we're live! Hello, everyone. Persephone Crestomancy here, and welcome back to the Storyteller's Corner, episode 30. We finally hit 30 episodes. I can't believe it. Let me just get the message going, and then... Oh, whoops. All right. Turn on more music. Sorry about that. I had to clear my throat. But yeah, welcome to the live stream. I'm glad to have you all here with me. Thank you again for coming to the birthday live stream. It was so much fun being able to talk and have fun with you guys, and thank you to everyone who came to the Discord server for Dr. Seuss. That was also really fun. And yeah, I'm looking really forward to reading the story that I have planned for you guys. I think you're really going to like it. And there we go. Alrighty, we are good to go. So yeah, welcome to the live stream, Persephone Crestomancy, and it has been quite a while since I've last talked about the Jungle Book. I remember not a few years ago, literally last year, I read to you the entirety of Mowgli's story, which was the trilogy, Mowgli's Brothers, Cause Hunting, and Tiger Tiger. And of course, they were all found in my copy of the Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling, illustrated by Eric Kincaid. Now, I mentioned before in Mowgli's Brothers that the Jungle Book isn't just the only story in this book. It has 3 other stories consisting of the White Seal, Rikki Tikki Tavi, and Toomaya the Elephants. And considering that it is the day after my birthday and I do love the ocean so very much, I thought it was fitting that I would read to you guys the White Seal. Now, the White Seal is another story by Rudyard Kipling, but it has some vague similarities to another book that I have in my collection called Watership Down by Richard Adams. I say this because both stories do involve an exodus, which an exodus is a long journey. And hi, welcome to those who have joined. Feel free to make conversation and ask questions. Don't be shy. Welcome. After all, I enjoy having some conversation and commentary before I actually read the story to you guys. But yes, both the White Seal and Watership Down are focused around an exodus. Now, Watership Down is definitely a lot more poignant, and the movie is a masterpiece. I will say that, but like if you are showing a little kid Watership Down, I would advise against that, because the animated film of Watership Down is very graphic. It is very grounded in nature and reality while still spinning this fantastical yarn. The White Seal's film adaptation is a lot more tamer, to an extent. We see skeletons, and we see bones, but there is never any blood. So I would recommend, like, if you were going to show a child a video or a film about animals, I would recommend the White Seal a little bit more, and obviously when they're, like, a little older. That is my take, though, and yeah, feel free to make some comment. Harry, don't be shy. Now, as a little kid, I remember seeing the movie The White Seal, but I never actually read the story. And much like Mowgli's Brothers, which is the first story of Mowgli's journey, there is a poem. Oh, and there go my speakers. Welcome to the live stream. It's not a live stream if something isn't going wrong. Come on. There we go. That's better. But yeah, welcome. Don't be shy. Make conversations. Thank you for coming to the live stream. I'm glad to have you. But like with Mowgli's Brothers, Cause Hunting, if I can just find the beginning page of it. Not Cause Hunting, but also like Tiger Tiger, which I'm pretty sure has it. It's been a while. Yes, there is a little bit of a sort of a pre-poem, like a poem or a quote that goes before the story. And the White Seal is the same. is the same as it has a lullaby of the seals, which I find it very interesting that they dive into the culture of seals to an extent. After this song, I will read the story, but yeah, oh, whoops, wrong button. But yes, I figured it would be nice to sort of celebrate the post-birthday celebrations with a favorite story of mine. And once again, the story is full of illustrations on every page, so I will make sure to show you guys the illustrations before I continue on the next page. And I do think you guys will really enjoy the story. At least I hope you do. I always try and choose stories that I know you guys will enjoy. Sorry, kind of a slow morning, but I hope you all are having a really good day. And again, thank you for all the love and the support yesterday, and for the continual love and support as I try to make this channel work. And I certainly do my best, because you know what? You're my fans and you deserve only the very best. So yeah, if no one has any comments or questions that they wish to make, then hi, welcome to the live stream. Glad to have you. I'm going to be reading The White Seal from The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling, illustrated by Eric Kincaid. If you have any comments or questions that you'd like to make before I read the story, please feel free. I always enjoy having conversations, not only about the book and the story, but conversations with you guys in general in the chat. It's one of the things I enjoy about this channel, is that I can reach as many people as I can, and that I'm able to talk with you guys and have conversations with you guys. So please, don't be shy. This is a safe space. Please let me have a sip of my warm chai tea. It's very yummy, very spicy. And I don't know, it seems fitting. But yeah, saying that a lot. 23 years old, another year older and supposedly wiser. But I think you will enjoy the illustrations, and I certainly hope you enjoy the story, because I always try and find stories that I know you guys will like. And this one is certainly... Here we are again, not the doctor! Hi! Welcome! You're the first person who came onto the live stream. Hi! Welcome, thank you for coming. I'm so glad to have you here. So today I'm going to be reading The White Seal. After the song ends, I promise I'll get into it, and it's got really pretty illustrations like before. We got the main character's parents on this page, and then we got main character's dad fighting another seal. Because today's story is all about seals. It is literally called The White Seal. And for those of you who don't, anyway, I digress. So, The White Seal. The White Seal by Rudyard Kipling. Get a sip of my tea. The White Seal. Oh, hush thee, my baby, the night is behind us, and the black waters that sparkled so green. The moon o'er the combers looks downward to find us, at rest in the hollows that rustle between. Where billow meets billow, there soft be thy pillow. Ah, weary wee flipperling, curl at thy ease. The storm shall not wake thee, nor a shark overtake thee, asleep in the arms of the slow, swinging seas. And that is a seal lullaby. The fact that Mama Seal just singing that to her pup, that just seems so freaking wholesome. Kitty little seal pup. They're so cute. Anyway. All these things happened several years ago at a place called Novostochna, or Northeast Point, on the island of St. Paul, far away in the Bering Sea. Limmershin, the winter wren, told me the tale when he was blown on the rigging of a steamer going to Japan, and I took him down into my cabin and warmed and fed him for a couple of days, till he was fit to fly back to St. Paul's again. Limmershin is a very odd little bird, but he knows how to tell the truth. An honest bird, as opposed to an honest word. That's interesting. Nobody ever comes to Nova Scotia except on business, and the only people who have regular business there are the seals. They come in the summer months by hundreds and hundreds of thousands out of the cold gray sea, for Nova Scotia Beach has the finest accommodations for seals of any place in all the world. Sea Catch knew that, and every spring would swim from whatever place he happened to be in, would swim like a torpedo boat straight for Nova Scotia and spend a month fighting with his companions for a good place on the rocks as close to the sea as possible. Sea Catch was 15 years old, a huge gray fur seal, with almost a mane on his shoulders and long, wicked dog teeth. With, when he heaved himself up on his front flippers, he stood more than 4 feet clear of the ground, and his weight, if anyone had been bold enough to weigh him, was nearly 700 pounds. He was scarred all over with the marks of savage fights, but he was always ready for just one fight more. He would put his head on one side as though he were afraid to look at his enemy in the face. Then he would shoot it out like lightning, and when the big teeth were firmly fixed on the other seal's neck, the other seal might get away if he could, but Sea Catch would not help him. Yet Sea Catch never chased a beaten seal, for that was against the rules of the beach. He only wanted room by the sea for his nursery. But as there were 40 or 50,000 other seals hunting for the same thing each spring, the whistling, bellowing, roaring, and blowing on the beach were something frightful. From a little hill called Hutchinson's Hill, you could look over 3.5 miles of ground, covered with fighting seals, and the surf was dotted all over with the heads of seals hurrying to land to begin their share of the fighting. They fought in the breakers, they fought in the sand, and they fought on the smoothest worn basalt rocks of the nurseries, for they were just as stupid and unaccommodating as men. Their wives never came to the island until late in May or in early June, for they did not care to be torn to pieces, and the young 2, 3, and 4-year-old seals, who had not begun housekeeping, went inland about half a mile through the ranks of the fighters, and played about on the sand dunes in droves and legions, and rubbed off every single green thing that grew. They were called the Hollischickie, the bachelors, and there were perhaps 200,000 or 300,000 of them at Nova Scotia alone. Sea Catch had just finished his 45th fight one spring when Matka, his soft, sleek, gentle-eyed wife, came up out of the sea, and he caught her by the scruff of the neck and dumped her down on his reservation, saying gruffly, "Late as usual, where have you been?" It was not the fashion for Sea Catch to eat anything during the 4 months he stayed on the beaches, and so his temper was generally bad. Matka knew better than to answer back. And for those who don't know, to grab by the scruff, essentially he grabbed her by the base of the neck and lifted her up and plopped her on his portion of the beach. Sea Catch. She looked around and cooed, "How thoughtful of you. You've taken the old place again." "I should think so," said Sea Catch. "Look at me." He was scratched and bleeding in 20 places. One eye was almost blind, and his sides were torn to ribbons. "Oh, you men," Matka said, fanning herself with her hind flipper. "Why can't you be sensible and settle your places quietly? You look as though you've been fighting with the killer whale." "I haven't been doing anything but fight since the middle of May. The beach is disgracefully crowded this season. I've met at least 100 seals from Buchanan Beach house hunting. Why can't people stay where they belong?" I've often thought that we should be much happier if we hauled out at Otter Island instead of this crowded place," said Matka. "Bah! Only the Hollischickie go to Otter Island. If we went there, they would say we were afraid. We must preserve appearances, my dear." Sea Catch sunk his head proudly between his fat shoulders and pretended to go to sleep for a few minutes. But all the time he was, oh my gosh, what the heck? My cats are being very crazy. Wow. Alright, now where was I? Let's see. Alright. Sea Catch sunk his head proudly between his fat shoulders and pretended to go to sleep for a few minutes, but all the time he was keeping a sharp lookout for a fight. Now that all the seals and their wives were on the land, you could hear their clamor miles out to sea above the loudest gales. At the lowest counting, there were over 1,000,000 seals on the beach. Old seals, mother seals, tiny babies, and holluschickie fighting, scuffling, bleeding, crawling, and playing together, going down to the sea and coming up from it in gangs and regiments, lying over every foot of ground as far as the eye could reach, and skirmishing about in brigades through the fog. Sorry. My throat's being persnickety. There we go. That's better. Terribly sorry. Let's see. It is nearly always foggy at Nova Scotia, except when the sun comes out and makes everything look all pearly and rainbow-colored for a little while. Kotick, Matka's baby, was born in the middle of that confusion, and he was all head and shoulders, with pale, watery blue eyes, as tiny seals must be. But there was something about his coat that made his mother look at him very closely. "Sea Catch," she said at last, "our baby is going to be white." "Empty clamshells and dried seaweed," snorted Sea Catch. "There has never been such a thing in the world as a white seal." "I can't help that," said Matka. "There is going to be now." And she sang the low, crooning seal song that all the mother seals sing to their babies. "Empty clamshells and dry seaweed," snorted Sea Catch. And here we go. We have Matka here, and then we have Matka, Sea Catch, and little baby Kotick. A little seal baby. He's so small and cute. He's adorable. So blue-eyed and all nice and white and fluffy. And of course, Mama Kotick absolutely loves him. Ooh! Aww! Yes, he's very cute. He's so very fluffy. Oh my gosh, my heart. Anyway. "You mustn't swim till you're 6 weeks old, or your head will be sunk by your heels, and summer gales and killer whales are bad for baby seals. Are bad for baby seals, dear rat, as bad can be, but splash and grow strong, and you can't be wrong, child of the open sea." Of course the little fellow did not understand the words at first. He paddled and scrambled about by his mother's side and learned to scuffle out of the way when his father was fighting with another seal, and the two rolled and roared up and down the slippery rocks. Matka used to go to sea to get things to eat, and the baby was fed only once in 2 days, but then he ate all he could and throve upon it. Little baby Kotick. First thing he did was to crawl inland, where he met tens of thousands of babies of his own age, and they played together like puppies, went to sleep on the clean sand, and played again. Pardon me. The old people in the nurseries took no notice of them, and the holluschickie kept to their own grounds, so the babies had a wonderful playtime. When Matka came back from her deep-sea fishing, she would go straight to their playground and call as a sheep calls for a lamb, and wait until she heard Kotick bleat. Then she would take the straightest of straight lines in his direction, striking out with her foreflippers and knocking the youngsters head over heels right and left. There were always a few hundred mothers hunting for their children through the playgrounds, and the babies were kept lively. But as Matka told Kotick, "So long as you don't lie in muddy water and get mange, or rub the hard sand into a cut or scratch, and so long as you never go swimming when there is a heavy sea, nothing will hurt you here." Little seals can no more swim than little children, but they are unhappy till they learn. The first time that Kotick went down to the sea, a wave carried him beyond his depth, and his big head sank, and his little hind flippers flew up exactly as his mother had told him in the song, and if the next wave had not thrown him back again, he would have drowned. After that, he learned to lie in a beach pool and let the wash of the waves just cover him and lift him up while he paddled, but he always kept his eye open for big waves that might hurt. He was too weak learning to use his flippers, and all the while he floundered in and out of water, and coughed and grunted and crawled up the beach, and took cat-naps on the sand, and went back again, until at last he found that he truly belonged to the water. Then, as you can imagine the times that he had with his companions, ducking under the rollers, or coming in atop of a comber and landing with a swash and a splutter as the big wave went whirling far up the beach, or standing upon his tail and scratching his head as the old people did, or playing I am the king of the castle on slippery, weedy rocks that just stuck out of the wash. Now and then he would see a thin fin, like a big shark's fin, drifting along the shore, and he knew that was the killer whale, the grampus, who eats young seals when he can get them. And Kotick would head for the beach like an arrow, and the fin would jig off slowly, as if it were looking for nothing at all. Grampus. The Grampus. Kind of like Krampus, but it's a killer whale and a seal's nightmare. Let me just type that in. That's interesting. If Matt Newcomb were here, he'd probably have a field day. He'd probably have a field day with the Grampus, the killer whale, also known as the Grampus. Let's see, nothing at all. Late in October, the seals began to leave St. Paul's for the deep sea, by families and tribes, and there was no more fighting over the nurseries, and the holluschickie played anywhere they liked. Next year, said Matka to Kotick, you will be a holluschickie, but this year you must learn how to catch fish. They set out together across the Pacific, and Matka showed Kotick how to sleep on his back, with his flippers tucked down by his side and his little nose just out of the water. No cradle was so comfortable as the long, rocking swell of the Pacific. When Kotick felt his skin tingle all over, Matka told him he was learning the feel of the water, and that tingly, prickly feelings meant bad weather coming, and he must swim hard to get away. In a little time, she said, you'll know where to swim to, but just now, we'll follow Sea Pig, the porpoise, for he is very wise. A school of porpoises were ducking and tearing through the water, and little Kotick followed them as fast as he could. How do you know where to go to? He panted. The leader of the school rolled his white eyes and ducked under. My tail tingles, youngster, he said. That means there's a gale behind me. Come along. When you're south of this sticky water, he meant the equator, and your tail tingles, that means there's a gale in front of you and you must head north. Come along. The water feels bad here. This was one of the very many things that Kotick learned, and he was always learning. Matka taught him how to follow the cod and the halibut along the undersea banks, and wrench the rockling out of his hole among the weeds, how to skirt the wrecks lying 100 fathoms below water, and dart like a rifle bullet in at one porthole and out at the other as the fishes ran, how to dance on the top of the waves when the lightning was racing all over the sky, and wave his saber politely at the stumpy-tailed albatross and the man-of-war hawk as they went down the wind, how to jump 3 or 4 feet clear out of the water, like a dolphin, flippers close to the side and tail curved, to leave the flying fish alone because they are all bony, and to take the shoulder piece out of a cod at full speed 10 fathoms deep, and to never stop and look at a boat or a ship, but particularly a rowboat. And then we have more pictures of Kotick the seal. We have Kotick with the other seal babies and his mom looking for him, and then we have Kotick and Grampus, the killer whale. Grampus. Baby Kotick, though. Baby Kotick is wholesome. All right. At the end of 6 months, what Kotick did not know about deep-sea fishing was not worth the knowing, and all that time he never set a flipper on dry ground. One day, however, he was lying half asleep in the warm water, somewhere off the island of Juan Fernandez. He felt faint and lazy all over, just as human people do when the spring is in their legs, and he remembered the good firm beaches of Nova Scotia 7,000 miles away, the games his companions made, the smell of the seaweed, the seal roar and the fighting. That very minute he turned north, swimming steadily, and he went and as he went on, he met scores of his mates, all bound for the same place. And they said, "Greetings, Kotick. This year we are all Halaschiki, and we can dance the fire dance in the breakers of Lucannon and play on the new grass. But where did you get that coat?" Kotick's fur was almost pure white now, and though he felt very proud of it, he only said, "Swim quickly, my bones are aching for the land." And so they all came to the beaches where they had been born, and heard the old seals, their fathers, fighting in the rolling mist. That night, Kotick danced the fire dance with the yearling seals. The sea is full of fire on summer nights all the way down from Nova Scotia to Lucannon, and each seal leaves a wake like burning oil behind him, and a flaming flash when he jumps, and the waves break in great phosphorescent streaks and swirls. Then they went inland to the Hollisticky grounds, and rolled up and down in the new wheat, and told stories about what they had done while they had been at sea. They talked about the Pacific as boys would talk about a wood that they had been nutting in. To gather nuts in. As you do, you gather nuts in the forest. And if anyone had understood them, he could have gone away and made such a heart of that ocean as never was. The 3 and 4-year-old Hollisticky romped down from the Hutchinson's hill, crying out of the way, youngsters! The sea is deep, and you don't know all that's in it yet. Sorry. You have rounded the horn. Hi, yearling, where did you get that white coat? I didn't get it, said Kotick. It grew. Then we have more Kotick. Kotick's jumping up out of the water with an albatross, and then baby Kotick with his mother. Baby Kotick with his loving mother, Matka. Matka, the sleek, gentle-eyed seal mother. I highly recommend you guys watch the animated film, which is directed by Chuck Jones, same person who did Mowgli's Brothers and Rikki Tikki Tavi, which are very good. Alrighty. And just as he was going to roll the speaker over, a couple of black-haired men with flat red faces came from behind a sand dune, and Kotick, who had never seen a man before, coughed and lowered his head. The Hollisticky just bundled off a few yards, and sat staring stupidly. The men were no less than Carrick Buterin, the chief of the seal hunters on the village, and Patalaman, his son. And they came from the little village not half a mile from the seal nurseries, and they were deciding what seals they would drive up to the killing pens, for the seals were driven just like sheep, to be turned into sealskin jackets later on. "Oh," said Patalaman, "look! There's a white seal!" Carrick Buterin turned nearly white under his oil and smoke, for he was an Aleut, and product of its time. I'm terribly sorry in advance. For he was an Aleut, and Aleuts are not clean people. Then he began to mutter a prayer. "Don't touch him, Alaman. There has never been a white seal since I was born. Perhaps it is old Zaharov's ghost. He was lost last year in the big gale." "I'm not going near him," said Patalaman. "He's unlucky." "Do you really think he is old Zaharov come back? I owe him some gull's eggs." "Don't look at him," said Carrick. "Head off that drove of 4-year-olds. The men ought to skin 200 a day, but it's the beginning of the season, and they are new to the work. 100 will do. Quick!" Patalaman rattled a pair of seal shoulder bones in front of a herd of Hollisticky, and they stopped dead, puffing and blowing. Then he stepped near, and the seals began to move, and their companions. They began to move, and Carrick headed them inland, and they never tried to get back to their companions. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of seals watched them being driven, but they went on playing just the same. Kotick was the only one who asked questions, and none of his companions could tell him anything, except that the men always drove away seals in that way for 6 weeks or 2 months of every year. "I am going to follow," he said, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head as he shuffled along in the wake of the herd. "A white seal is coming after us!" cried Patalaman. "That's the first time a seal has ever come to the killing grounds alone." "Hush! Don't look behind you," said Carrick. "It is Zaharov's ghost. I must speak to the priest about this." The distance to the killing ground was only half a mile, but it took an hour to cover. Because if the seals went too fast, Carrick knew that they would get heated, and then their fur would come off in patches when they were skinned. Let's see. So they went on very slowly, past Sea Lion's Neck, past Webster's house, till they came to the salt house just beyond the sight of the seals on the beach. Kotick followed, panting and wondering. He thought he was at the world's end, but the roar of the seal nurseries behind him sounded as loud as the roar of a train in a tunnel. Then Craig sat down on the moss and pulled out a heavy pewter watch and let the drove cool off for 30 minutes. And Kotick could hear the fog dew dripping from the brim of his cap. Then 10 or 12 men, each with an iron club 3 or 4 feet long, came up, and Craig pointed at one or two of the drove that were bitten by their companions or were too hot, and the men kicked those aside with their heavy boots made of the skin of a walrus's throat. Then Carrick said, "Let's go!" and the men clubbed the seals on the heads as fast as they could. 10 minutes later, little Kotick did not recognize his friends any more, for their skins were ripped off from the nose to the hind flippers, whipped off and thrown down on the ground, the pile. That was enough for Kotick. He turned and galloped. A seal can gallop swiftly for a short time. Back to the sea, his little new mustache bristling with horror. At Sea Lion's Neck, where the great sea lions sit on the edge of the surf, he flung himself flipper overhead in the cool water and rocked there, gasping miserably. "What's here?" said a sea lion gruffly, as it is a rule for sea lion. For as a rule the sea lions keep themselves to themselves. "Snoochny, Ochin Snoochny, I am lonesome, very lonesome," said Kotick. "They're killing all the holluschickie on all the beaches." The sea lion turned his head inshore. "Nonsense," he said. "Your friends are making as much noise as ever. You must have seen old Carrick polishing off a drove. He's done that for 30 years. "It's horrible," said Kotick, backing water as a wave went over him, and steadying himself with a screw stroke of his flippers that brought him up all standing within 3 inches of a jagged edge of rock. "Well done for a yearling," said the sea lion, who could appreciate good swimming. "I suppose it is rather awful from your way of looking at it, but if you seals will come here year after year, of course the men get to know it, and unless you can find an island where no men ever come, you will always be driven." "Isn't there such an island?" began Kotick. I've followed the poultice, the halibut, for 20 years, and I can't say I've found it yet. But look here, you seem to have a fondness for talking to your betters. Suppose you go to Walrus Islet, and talk to Seavitch. He may know something. Don't flounce off like that. It's a 6-mile swim, and if I were you, I should haul out and take a nap first, little one." Kotick thought that was good advice, so he swam round to his own beach, hauled out, and slept for half an hour, twitching all over, as seals will. Then he headed straight for Walrus Islet, a little low sheet of rocky island almost due northeast from Nova Scotia, all ledges of rocks and gulls' nests where the walruses herded by themselves. He landed close to old Seavitch, the big, ugly, bloated, pimpled, fat-necked, long-tusked walrus of the North Pacific, who has no manners except when he is asleep, as he was then, with his hind flippers half in and half out of the surf. "Wake up!" barked Kotick, for the gulls were making a great noise. "Oh, what's that?" said Seavitch, and he struck the next walrus a blow with his tusks and woke him up. The next struck the next, and so on until they were all awake and staring in every single direction but the right one. "Hi, it's me," said Kotick, bobbing in the surf and looking like a little white slug. "Well, may I be skinned," said Seavitch, and they all looked at Kotick as you can fancy a club full of drowsy old gentlemen would look at a little boy. Kotick did not care to hear any more about skinning just then. He had seen enough of it, so he called out, "Isn't there any place for seals to go where men can't ever come?" "Go and find out," said Seavid, shutting his eyes. "Run away, we are busy here." Kotick made his dolphin jump in the air and shouted as loud as he could, "Clam eater! Clam eater!" And he knew that Seavid never caught a fish in his life, but always rooted for clams and seaweeds, though he pretended to be a very terrible person. I need to get some tea. That's better. Let's see. Naturally, the chickies and the gooveruskis and the epatkas and the burgomaster girls and the kuitiwakes and the puffins, who were always looking for a chance to be rude, took up the cry, and so Limitian told me, for nearly 5 minutes you could not have heard a gun fired on Walrus Islet. All the population was yelling and screaming, "Clam-eater! Starik! Old man!" while Seavich rolled from side to side, grunting and coughing. Here we have sleepy Seavich the walrus, and then we have Seavich and the walrus all woken up. It's kind of funny though. It's like Seavich wakes up, smacks the other walrus, and it's a long line of smacking until all of them are awake and looking everywhere except the right direction. I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. "Now will you tell?" said Kotick, all out of breath. "Go and ask the sea cow," said Seavich. "If he is still living, he'll be able to tell you." How shall I know? "How shall I know the sea cow when I meet him?" said Kotick, sheering off. For those who don't know, the sea cow is essentially a manatee. I'm going to shut my bedroom door real quick, so that way I don't get that much audio going in, and I'm terribly sorry about that. Alright. There we go. So I'll just reread that last bit. "How shall I know the sea cow when I meet him?" said Kotick, sheering off. "He's the only thing in the sea uglier than Seavich!" screamed a burgomaster gull, wheeling under Seavich's nose. "Uglier, and with worse manners! Starik!" Kotick swam back to Nova Scotia, leaving the gulls to scream. There he found that no one sympathized with him in his little attempts to discover a quiet place for the seals. They told him that men had always driven the holluschickie. It was a part of the day's work, and that if he did not like to see ugly things, he should not have gone to the killing grounds. But none of the other seals had seen the killing, and that made the difference between him and his friends. Besides, Kotick was a white seal. "What you must do," said old Sea Catch after he heard his son's adventures, "is to grow up and be a big seal like your father and have a nursery on the beach. Then they will leave you alone. In another 5 years you ought to be able to fight for yourself." Even gentle Matka, his mother, said, "You will never be able to stop the killing. Go and play in the sea, Kotick." And Kotick went off and danced the fire dance with a very heavy little heart. That autumn, he left the beach as soon as he could and set off alone because of a notion in his bullet head. He was going to find Sea Cow, if there was such a person in the sea. And he was going to find a quiet island with good firm beaches for seals to live on, where men could not get them. So he explored and explored by himself from the North to the South Pacific, swimming as much as 300 miles in a day and night. He met with more adventures than can be told, and narrowly escaped being caught by the basking shark, the spotted shark, and the hammerhead. And he met all the untrustworthy ruffians that loaf up and down the seas, and the heavy polite fish, and the scarlet-spotted scallops that are moored in one place for hundreds of years and grow very proud of it. But he never met Sea Cow, and he never found an island that he could fancy. If the beach was good and hard, with a slope behind it for seals to play on, there was always the smoke of a whaler on the horizon, boiling down blubber, and Kotick knew what that meant. Or else he could see that seals had once visited the island had been killed off, and Kotick knew that where men come once, they would come again. He picked up an picked up with an old stumpy-tailed albatross who told him that Kergue, it's haven't pronounced this word before. I'm here. Hi, I'm at Newcomb. Welcome. I'm reading The White Seal, and you just missed where we talked about the killer whale, also known as the Grampus. The Grampus. It's like Krampus, but a killer whale and a seal's worst nightmare. I actually mentioned you know, the doctor. It's like if Matt Newcomb were here and he heard about the Grampus, he'd be all over it. Along with the crow from the Snow Queen. Anyway, let's see. So Kotick is... Oh my gosh, aquatic Krampus! Not... Oh my gosh, aquatic Krampus! Yes, not Krampus, Grampus! Grampus! A killer whale. Anyway. Who told him that Kerguelen Island was the very place for peace and quiet, and when Kotick went down there, he was all but smashed to pieces against some wicked black cliffs in a heavy sleet storm with lightning and thunder. Yet as he pulled out against the gale, he could see that even there had once been a seal nursery. So it was in all the other islands that he had visited. Limmerson gave a long list of them, for he said that Kotick had spent 5 seasons exploring, with a 4 months' rest each year at Nova Scotia, when the Hollischickie used to make fun of him and his imaginary islands. He went to the Galapagos, a horrid dry place on the equator, where he was nearly baked to death. He went to the Georgia Islands, the South Orkneys, Emerald Island, Little Nightingale Island, Goes Island, Bouvet's Island, the Crossettes, and even to a little speck of an island south of the Cape of Good Hope. But everywhere the people of the sea told him the same things. Seals had come to those islands once upon a time, but men had killed them all off. Even when he swam thousands of miles out of the Pacific and got to a place called Cape Corrientes, that was when he was coming back from Goes Island, he found a few hundred mangy seals on a rock, and they told him that men came there too. That nearly broke his heart, and he headed round the Horn back to his own beaches, and on this way he hauled out on an island full of green trees, where he found an old seal who was dying. Kotick caught fish for him, and told him all his sorrows. What's next? A large flying bird named Frampus? Not as far as I know, but we do got an orc called Grampus. Give me a sec. Let me just show you. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Behold, the Grampus. A baby Kotick. Baby Kotick is small, very fluffy, very sweet. So yeah, we got an aquatic Grampus. Alrighty, let's see. Now, said Kotick, I am going back to Nova Scotia, and if I am driven to the killing pens with a Hollischickie, I shall not care. The old seal said, Try once more. I am the last of the lost rookery of Masafura. And in the days when men killed us by the hundreds, thousands, there was a story on the beaches that some day a white seal would come out of the north and lead the seal people to a quiet place. I am old, and I shall never live to see the day, but others will. Try once more. And Kotick curled up his mustache, by now it was a beauty, and said, I am the only white seal that has ever been born on the beaches, and I am the only seal, black or white, who ever thought of looking for new islands. That cheered him immensely, and when he came back to Nova Scotia that summer, Matka, his mother, begged him to marry and settle down, for he was no longer a Hollischickie, but a full-grown sea catch, with a curly white mane on his shoulders, as heavy, as big, and as fierce as his father. Give me another season, he said. Remember, mother, it is always the 7th wave that goes farthest up the beach. Curiously enough, there was another seal who thought that she would put off marrying till the next year, and Kotick danced the fire dance with her all down Lucannon Beach the night before he set off his last exploration. This time he went westward, because he had fallen on the trail of a great shoal of halibut, and he needed at least 100 pounds of fish a day to keep him in good condition. He chased them till he was tired, and then he curled himself and went to sleep on the hollows of the groundswell that sets into Copper Island. He knew the coast perfectly well, so about midnight he felt himself gently bumped on a weed bed and said, "The tide is strong tonight," and turning over under water, opened his eyes slowly and stretched. Then he jumped like a cat, for he saw huge things nosing about in the shoal water, browsing on heavy fringes of the weeds. "By the great combers of Magellan," he said beneath his mustache, "who in the deep sea are these people?" They were like no walrus, sea lion, seal, bear, whale, shark, fish, squid, or scallop that Kotick had ever seen before. They were between 20 and 30 feet long, and they had no hind flippers, but a shovel-like tail that looked as if it had been whittled out of wet leather. Their heads were the most foolish-looking things you ever saw, and they balanced on the ends of their tails in the deep water when they weren't grazing, bowing solemnly to one another and waving their flippers as a fat man waves his arm. "Ahem," said Kotick. "Good sport, gentlemen?" Those big things answered by bowing and waving their flippers like the frog footmen. Oh, whoops. I forgot to show you the pictures. I'm sorry. So we have Kotick escaping a hammerhead shark. And then we have the old seal that Kotick fed fish to. Terribly sorry I forgot to show you guys that picture. I'm sorry. So, yeah, essentially, the sea cows are manatees. Manatees. Let's see. When they began feeding again, Kotick saw that their part upper lip was split into two pieces that they could twitch apart about a foot and bring together again with a whole bushel of seaweed between the splits. They tucked the stuff into their mouths and chumped solemnly. "Messy style of feeding that," said Kotick. They bowed again, and Kotick began to lose his temper. "Very good," he said. "If you do happen to have an extra joint in your front flipper, you needn't show off so. I see you bow gracefully, but I should like to know your names." The split lips moved and twitched, and the glassy green eyes stared, but they did not speak. "I love manatees!" And you can, well, yay, because there are some manatees on this picture. There are some manatees. I'll show them to you after I finish reading the page. So yeah, the sea cows are manatees. I'm reminded of the animated film. It's like, Kotick, how will I know the sea cow when I see him? Seagull, he's the only thing in the world uglier than a walrus. Let's see. Okay. "Well," said Kotick, "you're the only people I've ever met uglier than Seevich, and with worse manners." Then he remembered in flash what the burgomaster gull had screamed at him when he was a little yearling at Walrus Islet, and he tumbled backward in the water, for he knew that he had found sea cow at last. The sea cows went on, schlooping and grazing and chumping in the weeds, and Kotick asked them questions in every language that he had picked up in his travels, and the sea people talked nearly as many languages as human beings, but the sea cows did not answer, because sea cow cannot talk. "He only has 6 bones in his neck, where he ought to have 7, and they say under the sea that prevents him from speaking even to his companions. But as you know, he has an extra joint in his fore flipper, and by waving it up and down, he makes a sort of clumsy telegraphic code." By daylight, Kotick's mane was standing on end, and his temper was gone where the dead crabs go. Then the sea cow began traveling northward, very slowly, only stopping to hold absurd bowing councils from time to time, and Kotick followed them, saying to himself, "People who are such idiots as these are would have been killed long ago if they hadn't found some safe island, and what is good enough for the sea cow is good enough for the sea catch. All the same, I wish they'd hurry." Because It's like the sea people can speak various languages, but the sea cow can't talk. I don't know. It's kind of funny. Okay, there we go. It was weary work for Kotick. The herd never went more than 40 or 50 miles a day and stopped to feed at night, and kept close to the shore all the time, while Kotick swam round them, over them, and under them, but he could not hurry them on 1/2 mile. As they went farther north, they held a bowing council every few hours, and Kotick nearly bit off his mustache with impatience till he saw that they were following up a warm current of water, and then he respected them more. Impatient Kotick. One night they sank through the shiny water, sank like stones, and for the first time since he had known them, began to swim quickly. Kotick followed, and the pace astonished him, for he never dreamed that Sea Cow was anything of a swimmer. They headed for a cliff by the shore, a cliff that ran down into deep water and plunged into a dark hole at the foot of it, 20 fathoms under the sea, and Kotick badly wanted fresh air before he was out of the dark tunnels that they led him through. "My wig!" he said, when he rose, gasping and puffing into open water at the far end. It was a long dive, but it was worth it. And so here we have Kotick, now a full-on sea catch. And here, Matt, the sea cows! The manatees! The manatees and their clumsy waving and their split lips. Behold, Matt, the sea cows! Matt, yay! You got an aquatic Krampus and you got manatees. Are you happy? Are you not entertained? Oh my gosh, aquatic Krampus. Alrighty. Oh boy. Oh, jeez. Sorry about that. I had to stretch a little. The sea cows had separated and were browsing lazily along the edges of the finest beaches that Kotick had ever seen. They were long stretches of smooth, worn rocks running for miles, exactly fitted to make seal nurseries, and there were playgrounds of hard sand sloping inland behind them, and there were rollers for seals to dance in, and long grass to roll in, and sand dunes to climb up and down, and best of all, Kotick knew, by the feel of the water, which never deceives a true sea catch, that no man had ever come here. The first thing he did was to assure himself that the fishing was good, and then he swam along the beaches, counted up the delightful low-sounding islands, half hidden in the beautiful rolling fog. Away to the northward, out to sea ran a line of bars and shoals and rocks that would never let a ship come within 6 miles of the beach, and between the islands and the mainland was a stretch of deep water that ran up to the perpendicular cliffs, and somewhere below the cliffs was the mouth of the tunnel. "It's Nova Scotia over again, but 10 times better," said Kotick. "Sea Cow must be wiser than I thought. Men can't come down the cliffs, even if there were any men, and the shoals to seaward would knock any ship to splinters. If any place in the sea is safe, this is it." He began to think of the seal he had left behind him, but though he was in a hurry to go back to Nova Scotia, he thoroughly explored the new country so that he would be able to answer all questions. Oh, oops. My mouse was in the way. Then he dived and made sure of the mouth of the tunnel and raced through the southward. But no one but a sea cow or a seal would have dreamed of there being such a place, and when he looked back to the cliffs, even Kotick could hardly believe that he had been under them. He was 6 days going home, though he was not swimming slowly. When he had just hauled out above Sea Lion's neck, the first person he met was the seal who had been waiting for him, and she saw by the look in his eyes that he had found his island at last. But the holluschickie and Sea Catch, his father, and all the other seals laughed at him when he told them that he had discovered, and a young seal about his own age said, "This is all very well, Kotick, but you can't come from no one knows where and order us off like this. Remember, we've been fighting for our nurseries, and that's a thing you never did. You preferred prowling about in the sea." The other seals, surprise, Ghost, hi, welcome. I'm almost done reading. The story of the white seal is almost over, but I think you'd really like it. The illustrations are really good. We got manatees, we got gulls, we got sharks, and we got Grampus, the killer whale who likes eating seals. And we got a baby seal. We also got a baby seal. Because who doesn't like baby seals? You can't look me in the eye and tell me that you don't like baby seal. Baby Kotick. He's small and fluffy. Very sweet. Let's see. There's manatees and a sea Krampus! Those things look friggin' weird. They're seals! They're seals, Ghost. My goodness. The other seals laughed at this, and the young seal began twisting his head from side to side. He had just married that year and was making a great fuss about it. "I've no nursery to fight for," said Kotick. "I want only to show you all a place where you will be safe. What's the use of fighting?" "Oh, if you're trying to back out, of course. I've no more to say," said the young seal with an ugly chuckle. Okay, I'll cut you slack. Yeah, they're seals. They're wonderful. Anyway. "Will you come with me if I win?" said Kotick, and a green light came into his eyes, for he was very angry at having to fight at all. "Very good," said the young seal carelessly. "If you win, I'll come." He had no time to change his mind, for Kotick's head darted out and his teeth sank in the blubber of the young seal's neck. He then threw himself back on his haunches and hauled his enemy down the beach, shook him, and knocked him over. Then Kotick roared to the seals. "I've done my best for you these 5 seasons past. I've found you the island where you will be safe, but unless your heads are dragged off your silly necks, you won't believe. I'm going to teach you now. Look out for yourselves!" Lemmerchen told me that never in his life, and Lemmerchen sees 10,000 big seals fighting every year. Never in all his little life did he see anything like Kotick charge into the nurseries. He flung himself at the biggest sea catch he could find, caught him by the throat, choked him, and bumped it, and banged him till he grunted for mercy. Then he threw him aside and attacked the next. You see, Kotick had never fasted for 4 months, as the big seals did every year, and his deep-sea swimming trips kept him in perfect condition. I just get some tea. The epic shouting. It's kind of hard on my throat. All right. Okay, where'd I go? Okay, perfect condition. And best of all, he had never fought before. His curly white mane stood up with rage, his eyes flamed, and his big dog teeth glistened, and he was splendid to look at. Old Sea Catch's father saw him tearing past, hauling the grizzled old seals about as though they had been halibut, and upsetting the young bachelors in all directions. And Sea Catch gave one roar and shouted, "He may be a fool, but he is the best fighter on the beaches. Don't tackle your father, my son, he's with you." Kotick roared in answer, and old Sea Catch waddled in, his mustache on end, blowing like a locomotive, while Matka and the seal that was going to marry Kotick cowered down and admired their menfolk. It was a gorgeous fight, for the two fought as long as there was a seal that dared lifted up his head, and then they paraded grandly up and down the beach, side by side, bellowing. Who's the best fighter? Kotick. In seal terms, it's Kotick. In Cambian terms, it's you, Ghost. But yeah, we have Kotick as an adult and Kotick and his father rounding up the beaches. I like how they describe Matka and the female seal who wishes to marry Kotick. They're staying away from a distance, but they're admiring their menfolk. Oh, yes. They're just admiring their menfolk. I wish we knew a name for the female seal, but I don't know. I like how they did the story. All right. At night, just as the northern lights were winking and flashing through the fog, Kotick climbed a bare rock and looked down on the scattered nurseries and the torn, bleeding seals. "Now," he said, "I have taught you your lesson. unless werewolves count. Do werewolves count? This is a story about seals, so werewolves. Well, don't worry, I won't cause animal cruelty. My grandma just stopped by and gifted me microwave pizzas. Life is perfect. You got microwave pizzas, you got manatees, and you got an aquatic Krampus. Are you happy? Are you having a good day? Head pat, head pat, head pat. Alrighty, so. Gary, can I have one? Now, he said, I have taught you your lesson. My wig, said Sea Catch, boosting himself up stiffly, for he was fearfully mauled. The killer whale could not have cut them up worse. Son, I'm proud of you, and what's more, I'll come with you to your islands, if there is such a place. Here, you fat pigs of the sea! Who comes with me to the sea cow's tunnel? Answer, or I shall teach you again! Roared Kotick. There was a murmur like a ripple of the tide all up and down the beaches. We will come, said thousands of tired voices. We will follow Kotick the white seal. Then Kotick dropped his head between his shoulders and shut his eyes proudly. He was not a white seal any more, but red from head to tail. All the same, he would have scorned to look at or touch one of his wounds. A week later, he and his army, nearly 10,000 holluschickie and old seals, went away north to the sea cow's tunnel, Kotick leading them, and the seals that stayed at Nova Scotia called them idiots. But next spring, when they all met off the fishing banks in the Pacific, Kotick's seals told such tales of the new beaches beyond Sea Cow's tunnel that more and more seals left Nova Scotia. Of course, it was not done all at once. But for the seals need a long time to turn things over in their minds. Oh, that was my tablet. But year by year, more seals went away from Nova Scotia and Lucannon and the other nurseries to the quiet, sheltered beaches where Kotick sits all the summer through, getting bigger and fatter and stronger each year, while the holluschickie play round him in that sea where no man comes. And that is the end of the story, and it ends, I believe, with an image of Sea Catch, and then the next story is, of course, Rikki Tikki Tavi, which, that's a story for another day, but that is the story of the white seal. I don't know why I'm getting so tired. I apologize for that, but that is the story of the white seal. And I hope you guys all enjoyed the story as I enjoyed reading it to you. I apologize. Once again, it was a product of its time. But the story focuses on the exodus of the seals trying to find a place where no man comes. Again, it's a product of its time, so I apologize in advance. But I hope you guys genuinely did enjoy the story despite that. And once again, thank you so much for coming, those of you who did come. I always love reading these stories to you. I love making these conversations and just being able to hang out with you guys and reading these stories. I had fun. You came in near the end, but yeah, you got Grampus, the killer whale who likes to eat seals. You got Grampus and manatees. Manatees who cannot speak but wave to people and they bow. Manatees bowing gracefully and waving in sort of in code, since the sea cow can't speak. But yeah, I think that'll just about wrap it up, since I mean, it doesn't seem like much conversation is going on. But again, thank you so much for coming. Your company, your love, your support, it means a lot to me, and I always enjoy reading these stories to you guys. I have some more stories in mind, and I definitely plan on reading them as soon as I get the chance, because there's so many stories that I have in my library, and it's sometimes hard for me to choose which one I want to read to you guys. because there are plenty of stories around the world. And again, I'm going to be doing more variety. So next time I read a story, it will be something new, something you most likely haven't heard of before. But yeah, I think that'll just about do it for this live stream. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! The white seal. Oh, and also I forgot to mention, in the description of this video down below, I posted a link where you guys can see the film adaptation of The White Seal. I highly recommend it. It was directed by Chuck Jones, guy who did Looney Tunes. So yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah. All right, so yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and now I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye! There we go.